critical essay, make sure that you're following the question itself, so discussing the impact of manipulation on individuals. When we are preparing for the essay, make sure you look at the when, then, because for your thesis statement first. So the focus is manipulation, which would then equal our when. The assisting information to the question is the individuals, so that's our then. And then the background information is anything we can bring forward from our own lives in relation to individuals dealing with manipulation. So that's our because, right? That's the ending statement. So make sure that this is the part where you can actually add yourself and your own personal perspectives into your critical response. So use that as the time to do so. Once you have your thesis, go to your tagline. So start with the generic within the novel Ender's Game written by Orson Scott Card, the character of, and then put your character in and start to identify how they've had to deal with manipulation. Remember, your introduction is an intro, so you shouldn't be getting too far into details until you get into the body paragraphs. So keep the tagline nice and short and simple, so to speak, but at the same time, make sure it's there enough that I know what you're talking about. The rest of your introduction just needs to be general, focusing on manipulation and individuals, discussing the topic, of course, before the tagline and the thesis statement, and then just your thesis is summing that all up for us. So body paragraph 1 is the initially. Remember, you start with the term initially and then comma. What is the initial form of manipulation in the novel? So this could be based on the character, and if it is, keep your character from your tagline, be consistent, and it could also be just manipulation in general. If it is manipulation in general, be careful not to put too much onto your plate. Some people get scattered thoughts. Make sure it's clear and direct what you're talking about. So for example, if we have Ender, our first form of manipulation would be when he's at home and Graf comes in to convince him to go to battle school. That's one option. If you had Graf, it would be the same situation but the opposite perspective. And if you wanted to choose someone like Val, for example, it would be a visit from Graf, but it would be the one from the later chapters where he is convincing her to write a letter to Ender. So it doesn't matter where you start in the novel. All that matters is that you have that initially, however, finally steps. So those are just some examples you could use to get yourself started. When you are getting into the paragraph and you're writing and you're giving details, make sure you're thoroughly discussing the topic. So here are 4 steps you can use in all 3 body paragraphs to make sure that you are thoroughly discussing what you are talking about and what your topic is and who your character is. The first would be the claim. So you might remember this from the beginning of the school year. That is just your initially statement for body paragraph 1. For body paragraph 2, it would be your however statement. So you're just introducing the information. The next thing you want to do is make a point. So once you've stated the initially of what that initial manipulation is, you tell us how Orson Scott Card reinforces that impact. So he reinforces this through what action from what character, from what words, what word choices do they use or do they make. Then you go on to your quote, which supports the claim and the point, of course. So this here is just the words from the novel itself. Remember to put the page number along with that. And this quote could be embedded or it could just be tagged onto the end of a sentence. It's really up to you. Remember, if you're tagging it onto the end, it should be with a comma or a colon. If you're embedding it, it should sound like your own words, and then your own words should finish off the rest of the sentence. So it's kind of in between 2 of your own original thoughts. And then, of course, number 4 is support. So that's where you're discussing the quote that you've chosen and then showing the readers how it helped to further the understanding. So when you choose that quote, make sure you can discuss it. Make sure that it's something you can break apart and say, here's exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to the language used to reinforce manipulation. So body paragraph 2, the however. What is the second experience with manipulation? So remember, it doesn't have to be the same character if you are using manipulation and the novel in general and how it changes. It does not have to be a greater outcome than the first, so the second form of manipulation doesn't have to be better than the first form, so to speak, and it should be focused on the same character, but it could be opposite of the first paragraph. So if you chose to do one character and stick to one character, then that's perfect. This is what you need to make sure that you're doing. So if Ender is being manipulated in body paragraph 1, the however would be the change to when he starts manipulating people in body paragraph 2. If you use someone like Graf, the manipulation doesn't really come back, so you would just talk about how he changed in his form. So at first it was just using words to kind of persuade and manipulate Ender, and then it turned into persuading other children's perspectives of Ender. So it made it a little bit more severe in the case of the students at Battle School. Then we move on. Oh, and remember, use the same structure for body paragraph 2. When we move on to body paragraph 3, that is your finally, what is the final experience? It does not have to be the end of the novel, although it can be, but it should at least sum up a character's experience, bare minimum. So if it's Val, it might not be her the very last chapter that you drag her last piece of manipulation from, but it very well could be at the same time. And again, go back to this. It helps for all three of your body paragraphs using those 4 steps. And then the conclusion. So what? Restate your main ideas and terms from your thesis. Don't rewrite your thesis, but use the same terms that you've used to make those identifiers, and then that way you'll have a very strong unifying effect at the end, which helps on your rubric. Make sure that you mention Ender's Game in the conclusion. Don't just make it all individuals. It is about the text, so the text needs to be in there. And then sum up the main point of the essay. This is something that you're really strong in, so it shouldn't be too big of a deal when it comes to writing it at the end. And I put this 6th step in at the end for review and edit. Make sure you don't skip this, because lots of students do, and it doesn't work out as well as it could have if they would have just skimmed their essay one more time. So at least take a second look, if nothing else. And then if you have the time and the space where it's nice and quiet, read your essay out loud to yourself, because you'll catch a lot of the mistakes when you read your words out loud. So remember, if you have any other questions, just email me and let me know. But that's pretty much a nice little summary of a strong layout for your essay. Definitely you can use some of these examples, expand on them, you can throw them all away and start from scratch, whatever you need to do. But I'm hoping that this helps.